Welcome, friends. This is our Wednesday meditation and talk. We're being webcasted on my Facebook and YouTube pages and IMCWs as well. We begin with our meditation. So find yourself a way of sitting, a posture that supports you, that's comfortable, relaxed, and alert. You might begin by allowing yourself to settle and become still in the sitting posture. Let the attention turn inward, just noticing what's happening inside you. Gently scanning down the body, relaxing wherever there might be tension, and it helps to soften the eyes. You might imagine a smile spreading through the eyes, allowing the brow to be smooth. Perhaps a slight smile at the mouth, relaxing the jaw. Letting the shoulders fall away from the neck. And just feeling inside out the whole area of the shoulders, allowing there to be a dissolving, releasing of any tightness. Letting the hands rest in an easy, effortless way. Perhaps softening, feeling the aliveness inside the hands. Let the chest be open, relaxing the belly, letting this next breath be received in a softening belly, this breath. And now this one. And again, beginning to feel the aliveness spreading through the whole body, relaxing through the hips, the buttocks, the genitals. Feeling the legs, the length, the volume, the weight of the legs. Feeling the feet from the inside, the tingling, vibrating. And again, the hands tingling, vibrating. Feel the whole body now as a field of sensation. Noticing how the whole body can be filled with awareness. You might imagine the nucleus of an atom, and just as there's space, that all the subatomic particles arise and pass, and that there's space inside all the sensations, interior space, and that aliveness is appearing and dissolving in that space, in the awareness that's in and through your entire body. And you might begin to listen, sensing the sounds that are all around you. And sensing the space in all directions that that sound is appearing in. Space in and through the body, in and through space all around you. Continuous space filled with the light of awareness. Relax in and as this infinite sea of awareness, including the arising, passing sensations, feelings, thoughts. Resting in the awareness. It's what you are. Effortless presence that naturally allows these changing sensations, feelings, thoughts. And as you continue with this effortless presence, if there's something calling your attention, some strong sensation of tension or emotion, including it in the sea of awareness, finding its location in the body, sensing its size, shape, the quality of the sensation. And now find the I that is aware of the sensation, the sense of self, the I that's having this experience. And notice where that I is located. Perhaps inside the head or behind the head, like a sphere. This ghost sense of self that's aware of sensation. Just notice where it's located, the felt sense of it, of the I that's experiencing. That witnessing I. And then inviting the I to open and relax, dissolving in and as the fullness of awareness. Dissolving into the sea of awareness. Now checking back to the location of the original sensation or emotion that called you. And just notice if it's the same or different. You're not trying to change anything. Gently feel how this experience might want to integrate. Does it want to relax and open as all of awareness, dissolving? Or does it want awareness to flow into it? Or for the awareness that's already there, the interior awareness to wake up to itself? Letting whatever happens happen as you again rest as awareness. That infinite sea of awakeness. And if the mind fixates or goes off into thoughts, to simply notice, relaxing back again, dissolving in and as the fullness of awareness. Being at one with the infinite sea of awareness that includes this arising, passing life. Gently bringing yourself back, making that transition into a more informal mindfulness. Eyes are open, perhaps moving around a bit or stretching. And I'll share the upcoming announcements for this next week. I always invite you to my website, tarabrach.com, because we have new virtual offerings that are made available. So just to keep up with them, please do check in. And check out imcw.org for the live stream offerings that are made by our local DC area teachers and the affinity sanghas that are meeting this week are women, seniors living mindfully with illness, military and veterans, Teens of Color Mindfulness Group, and Café con Leche, which is a Spanish English group. Each week after the talk is over, there's time for a kind of community gathering for dialogue to share about whatever came up during the talk. I hope you'll join us. The information is tarabrach.com/class to join in. And each week I also mention Dana, which is the Pali word for generosity. And these talks and meditations are offered freely. And what you give by way of donation makes a great difference for us. So I want to thank you in advance. And the links can be found in the description. Okay, on to this week's talk. Namaste. Welcome, friends. Today, I'm having a conversation with Loch Kelly, who's a friend, a psychotherapist, highly respected and popular meditation teacher, and for very good reason. Loch guides in what he calls effortless mindfulness. And it brings a very real, non-dual depth and aliveness to the path of awakening. He's written several books on it and recently came out with an app that I tried out and found really, really good. So highly recommend. So our conversation is a rich one, and I hope you enjoy.
Hi, and welcome, everyone. It's my great pleasure today to be here dialoguing with my friend and colleague, Tara Brach. Welcome, Tara.
I feel really delighted to be with you, Loch.
Yes, so wonderful to have a chance, with all the busy schedules to dive deeply into things that we both love and are kind of have a vision to share with others, and now we can share together and while others listen.
Yeah, it's my idea of a good Dharma party.
Yes, that's right. This is what I love. So, I know that you just whenever I get a chance to hear you and what you're doing, I get natural sympathetic joy. So it's like, oh, effortless sympathetic joy arising because go Tara, go.
Well, I'm glad I'm serving in that way. And it's mutual, of course. I feel like we've been tracking each other for a good number of years.
Yeah. So I just wanted to start with that, just to say that it's a delight, and just to begin, by talking a little about. I noticed that your book, which I am rereading, Radical Acceptance, published about 20 years ago. But as I read it, it was like, oh, it's almost like it's your new book, because it's literally the themes are what we're both still talking about and almost are still cutting edge. So I wondered, like, as you kind of look at it today, what's new, what's the same, what is kind of the core of what you were communicating then that's fresh now?
Oh, thank you for that invitation. Yeah, so 20th anniversary edition, and it's got a new chapter and a new forward,
Mm,
and introducing the rain meditation and so on.
mm,
And I wanted to do this. I wanted to have the chance to bring it forward again. It feels like this is such a time of just getting divided, the dividedness, the hostility, the contempt, and
mm,
it's amongst so many of us. I feel in myself going into that kind of dividedness and
mhm,
demoting others in my mind because of their views, and it just felt so important. It feels like the only healing for these times is waking up consciousness, awake
mhm,
awareness,
mhm,
and an awake heart. And so I wanted to really make it fully relevant to these times, including our identities, how we get caught in social identities and don't see each
mhm.
other, really
Yes.
don't see who's there, and including, how we forget our belonging to this larger living planet and don't navigate in a way that's sensitive and conscious. So it felt the time, radical acceptance basically
Mm,
means to completely allow, without any resistance or opposition, the experience that's unfolding. And in that allowing, we open to a presence that has the kind of intelligence and compassion that can respond. So it's not passive,
mhm, mhm.
it's actually the grounds for activism, but more spiritually rooted activism.
Yes.
So thank you for inviting that out, because I'm excited to bring consciousness practices into the world that are
Mhm.
so linked to what is going on right now.
Yeah, yeah, as you say, it's, as social animals, there is a tendency to wanna be part of a group and to bond, but then that connection that keeps us in the more family or smaller sense and creates this otherness that makes us feel that that movement to the bigger we, to the global family, is what's needed by, but not just through politics or actions, or but also through transformation of consciousness, which is really seeing that we are the same and that we're passionately, no matter what the view is, passionately feeling that we're protecting something valuable by trying to hold a position about it.
I love the way you're framing it, because I often think of the whole evolution of consciousness as waking up to that belonging,
Mm,
knowing that, but it's not intellectual. It has to be a felt sense that the life that's living through you, the awareness that's looking through your eyes, is completely the same. And that's what wakes up caring. And it's interesting, right before we connected here, I was reading an article in Scientific American that has to do with insects being sentient and having feelings, feeling pain and joy. And I feel like it takes really training our attention to wake up past some idea of a hierarchy where humans are better, more worthwhile, and between humans, where different groups feel better, are more worthwhile. And it's very much part of our survival brain to actually make those differences, to feel inferior and superior. And yet we have this capacity to wake up out of that. And then that takes, to me, real dedication to sense this living world as sentient. I mean, that's a radical thing, but when we actually feel it, like, we
yes.
look at a tree and there's a sense, I have this mantra, I'll say, "We are friends," and then feel the
Uh-huh.
realness of that, you
Yes.
know,
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. That,
everything
we're,
changes.
it does. Yeah. And through that movement from, like we often do like a research study and then some, great understanding or philosophy. And then what's the practice to actually feel that rather than just think it or understand it or repeat it, because then it becomes a kind of a belief system rather than a lived experience. So yeah, there was a study, I think at Dartmouth, where they took groups of people that were all along the spectrum and flashed pictures of people similar and different, and there would be visceral reactions of positivity and visceral reactions, no matter what the how liberal or radical or of otherness that made people. So it is this survival instinct, as you say, and it takes that acceptance of that, not negating it or not saying it's bad to have that, or if we're spiritual, we wouldn't feel that. That's, I think, something you and I have in common. It's like, you know what? We're human beings. We got feelings. We got emotions. We got we got all the default, settings, and the first arrow that arises of, anger or hatred is just arising, and it's, the response that is possible, and the not only response but the compassion to that changes, and the type of compassion, I think, is, we talk about. I think that's the key, because there's kind of levels of compassion or depth of, meditative possibility of discovering, what both you and I talk about is just, being kind, being compassionate, attitude adjustment, positive thinking, and then expression of that, and then a kind of deep discovery of a natural compassion and a loving awareness or open-hearted presence, or that we are the love,
Yeah.
and then we can express or see through those eyes.
Well, that's a powerful, beautiful way of describing both the capacity to cultivate compassion and
Mm.
also the spontaneous compassion that arises when there's a wide open presence.
Hmm.
And if we bring that to what we were just talking about, that we are wired to see difference, we're
Hmm.
wired.
Yes.
And so to feel guilty, I've spent a
Right.
lot of moments investigating white guilt, all
Hmm.
the guilt for feeling, I am responsible, I'm not doing enough to alleviate the horror of racial violence.
Hmm.
And my own process, just to make it very personal,
Hmm.
was just what you were describing, which was I had to face, and this is ongoing. This is not a fait accompli, but face the conditioning that my mind judged as really ugly, and face it and feel the suffering of it, feel how it actually created separation. It imprisoned me and made me not know my belonging to others. And it was when I felt the realness of that suffering that I'm putting my hand on my heart because I do that sometimes, that there was a tenderness and an acceptance of, just as you said, this is just this body mind's conditioning. But in that presence, there was a capacity to see beyond the ways that I had been creating separation. And like you said, it takes practice. I have one friend who described how he'd be on the subway and he'd notice himself in that classic, making others other, the unreal other who's less than. And he would then meditate on the word thou. He would just sense them and sense spirit, sacredness, the sentience living through them, and just mentally whisper thou. And it dissolved that separateness. And it's like the gift of bringing our attention to how we create separation, holding it with complete compassion, and then being able to see beyond and start to foster that sense of true belonging. I mean, we can't be alone on this planet if we truly know our belonging to, the insects and the trees and those of different races and onward. And I guess I just keep coming back to there's motivation to do that because there's some deep part of our being, our already awake heart mind that really longs for that true belonging, not the
Yeah.
belonging to a subgroup and feeling, rah, rah, we're the best, but that
Yeah.
true belonging, because that's the only way there's, a truly fearless heart and a loving heart is knowing we're all that knowing that oneness.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. You just, as you shared personally about your experience, I immediately kind of went back to going early on to Asia and being introduced in a kind of a deep way to meditation and starting in Sri Lanka, doing 9 months of Vipassana and sight meditation, both at the university and then doing, 5-day retreats, 10-day retreats, 21-day retreats, and then going up and having good fortune of meeting Tibetan teacher Toku Urgyen Rinpoche and kind of getting a, a full introduction into from, all the traditions, having done some Zen before that and kind of feeling they all were connected. But I just remember after having a kind of initial dropping into that meditative insight that's experiential, feeling like, well, do I want to stay and be a monk? And I was like, no, I want to go back to New York City where people are suffering and finish, do a social work degree and, right into my family because that's where it feels like that, meditation and action leads to almost a kind of a playful, joy of like, we're all kids in a playground, but everyone's innocent and suffering and a little bit crazy.
I love it. It's the essence of the bodhisattva path, the
Mm,
path of an awakening being is if you know you're belonging, why leave the field of beings that we're all a part of?
mm,
And that doesn't mean that we don't take, as you did, take real time in
hmm. Yeah.
quiet contemplative retreat. But there's something so beautiful and powerful about holding
Mm,
hands and
mm,
helping. I just think of the activity of awareness is love. And
mhm,
of course it gets confused and twisted, and we have all the expressions in the world of cruelty and ignorance. But the original impulse of
mhm.
awareness is love.
Yes. Yeah, that's that expression from its from its freedom and almost absence of negativity, like non-judgmental, almost neutral or free, but then as that non-dual in the sense of that pure awake awareness recognizes not other than aliveness. When we drop deeply, we go, "Uh-oh, there's shame," like, "Oh, there's guilt. Oh, there's that memory of I did all that. I better, oh, that person did it to me." We go out, we go in, but willing to go deeper and then include this, with a real full on the cushion, off the cushion uh, way um, of being in the unfolding of this awakening, which seems like it's the potential for just human development rather than some esoteric, advanced, Olympic athlete thing.
I'm with you. It feels like that is the hope. And you also are pointing to where the stuck place is in the suffering, which is,
Mm,
um, the activity of awareness is love. There's a basic goodness. And so many people say, well, I can't find it. I don't
yeah.
trust it. If there's basic goodness, how come I feel hatred and anger? And it feels to me like one of the most powerful ways of deepening attention is to start realizing that every emotion is intelligent,
Hmm.
and it gets torqued because we get caught in the sense of a separate self and get all identified and twisted and so on, kind of like like a hose that gets twisted and the water's not flowing through. But we can pay attention in a way that naturally untwists when instead of adding that second arrow that you described of, "Oh, this is
Mm,
bad," or "I'm bad,"
mhm,
finding out deep down, right? Really investigating those emotions, anger, and
mm,
finding right embedded inside anger is an energy that is trying to, in some way, protect us, serve us. It anticipates
mhm,
something is an obstacle to our unfolding.
mm,
And if we can sense that, sense, I think of it as life loving life, that there's a life
mm.
loving life energy at the heart of every emotion. And then we can sense the way it got twisted. Our awareness, because we're not judging, is actually a healing attention that can untwist that hose and allow the waters to flow and actually get integrated in our whole body. So a lot of what I've been doing and working with people is when they're stuck saying, well, what's that part trying to do for you? And I
Yes.
know you have
Yeah.
similar approaches because
Yeah.
if we actually sense the fear is trying to protect us, if we
Yes.
sense that we can say thank you to the fear. I'm okay right now, but thank you. The relationship with that part shifts. And so there's some actual possibility of untwisting the fear
Mm.
and freeing up what's under it, which is a care about life.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. And, with the different psychological and contemplative views we have, I mean, I think that's something we certainly have very much in common. You can you can experience that feeling or emotion in many different levels, almost like eyeglasses or a microscope or electron microscope, or then a subpersonality or a persona so that we don't just kind of spiritually zap it away with awareness or mindfulness as if it's just a story or just a thought or as one type of way of working with it. But as you say, it's almost like off the cushion. The way I find that emotions arise is sometimes they'll arise as natural emotional reaction, like a response to a loud sound, just kind of fear or initial anger will get triggered. But then often they form into thoughts, feelings, sensations, worldview, and kind of sneak up the back of one's head and then take over and get feel like I'm possessed, and then adrenaline and cortisol goes into the body from there, so that it's like, well, this must be true because it's embodied and happening now. So from here, what do I know and what are the options? And then that, so in some ways, that what I call the mindful move, that first ability to step back or to pause, or to uh, take a breath, but the breath leads to an openness and then this other level of consciousness that is, with but not possessed, and then not staying in a detached witness, but finding a way, as you do with rain, to kind of then continue back to include and have a felt sense of what exactly is this part that feels angry. Where is it in my body? And what is it saying? And what age is it even? Sometimes, but sometimes it's multiple ages. It's got a view. And as soon as you realize that there are parts that you don't have to be egoless, you don't have to be, I'm either a self that is, fearful, or I'm no self. But that's like, no, I'm awake consciousness that has these parts that some are very functional, some are not so functional, some have, but there's the where you're aware from, which level of mind you're mindful from, starts to be the center, but it doesn't, as you say, eliminate or doesn't. It gives you actually more capacity to be a sensitive human being.
That's so I love the clarity in that. And the
Yeah.
sequence that you described, it's very intuitive and wise. And one of the things I think a lot of people want to know and want to trust, but have a hard time, is that that awake awareness is the truth of who I am, that these are
Hmm.
parts, they don't define me. I am not my fear, I am not my anger. And so it feels to me that a lot of spiritual practice is really about cultivating the quality of attention, this accepting, compassionate, clear attention, relaxed attention that allows us to disentangle our identity from the part. And I'll never forget at one point somebody shared the story about a wise sage, and people would bring their problems where they were most stuck, most small, most feeling like they were unworthy. And and he would swear them to silence, and he'd say, "I have just one question, and that is, what are you unwilling to feel?" And it seems so clear that it's our resistance to feeling life that keeps us identified with the small self. The small self is a patterning of resistance to what is true right here and now. And you described very beautifully the way of we have to pause. There are these patterns that keep us identified. So the sacred art of pausing. I mean, if we can just remember, just to pause for a moment, just that. Yeah, that's exactly right. Ah, because if we've paused, there's a little more space, a little more remembrance of presence that can allow us then to have the courage to feel what's here and the tenderness to feel what's here in a way that transforms not the thing, but the sense of identification, which is the whole deal, as you know. And one of the things I'm finding so helpful is that even once there is a sense of resting in a larger presence, um, there's often these different thoughts and feelings that re-snag. And it becomes really helpful then to, just, where is the self that's experiencing this? What I've noticed is actually inviting ourselves to sense, okay, where is it living? Like finding a place and a felt sense that correlates with that familiar sense of a self that's owning experience, that's running experience, whatever, that if we can connect with that, it's possible then to just invite that sense of a self to relax in and as the awake awareness that's truly its home. But we
Yeah.
have to see it, we have to catch it. It's like a ghost self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's always trying to go one up on everything else. It's like, are you aware of your feeling? Yes, I am. Well, are you aware of the one that's aware? Yes. In fact, I'm mindful of that one. Oh, I see. And I call that often a transitional subject.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so it's not a transitional object like when you're trying to bond with and self-soothe, but it keeps. So, as you said before, getting used to that home base that is actually everywhere, nowhere, and here, and is more of a awake presence, open-hearted field that is aware actually from within your body as much as all around and interconnected. So it's almost that's the home base. It isn't just this separate battery of a physical animal that is physically separate. And that's one of the keys is to recognize, no, I will always feel, in fact, it's important to feel separate physically from that tree or from as I'm driving a car. So there's a separate dualistic level of experience that is important and that and feelings happen within there, but who they're happening to isn't a point of view. It's and that feeling at first to the current protective system or ego defenses is like, oh, wow, it's a little spaced out, or that's a little woo woo, or that's like, oh, there's no ground here. But if you stay there, it's like, what's the ground made of? Oh, it's made of space. And but it's not just space, it's dancing. It's alive, and it's not other. And that that little pointing, I mean, that's been my interest, is like, okay, if this is already here, as is said in, what you write in and reference in Radical Acceptance and your teachings, and I do as well, as kind of a unique premise that it's not, there is development and training, but there also is more unlearning and untraining in order to discover something that's already here, not something that's, and that, so giving some trust and courage and support to almost directly recognize this, and then abide, and then include. And the key to living from it is you immediately have to include the triggers that will then come up and say, wait a minute, what are you doing? You're going to, you're not going to be able to function from here. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Yeah, what you're saying, most of the liberating practice is undoing. It's like having a clenched fist, and if you just bring awareness into the clenched fist, you don't have to, there's no self that has to unclench. There's a natural, the muscles know how to do it. Awareness knows how to wake up. We, just need to pay attention. And I feel like the message for me behind what I'm listening to is that the more we get familiar with boundless awake awareness, the more it's like every time there's that glimpse, there is some place in us that knows that this is more true than any story or narrative ever. There's a resonance of truth. And the more glimpses, the more sense that not just I'm going to let go into awake awareness, but awake awareness is what I am. Um, that keeps calling us. And one of the things I've noticed in a lot of teachings is, you kind of referred to emptiness dancing, how there's just this living dynamic, that there's a kind of dry emptiness where there's a sense of awake awareness, but it's very vast, and there's something really wonderful, and yet there's no tenderness. And what feels crucial is, and you talked about this earlier, is that we sense the awareness that is in and through our bodies. And it means really living and feeling from the inside out, that awareness that's in and through our bodies and through and around in every direction. And that is continuous space that's filled with the light of awareness. It's whole. And then when something comes up, there's a natural tenderness in the response. It's like the Tibetans talk about the 3 qualities of awareness as being that openness and that wakefulness, that knowing, and a natural tender responsiveness. And we don't get that 3rd quality unless we're really embodied, inhabiting it. So I feel like the more glimpses, and I want to name right here that I'm going to be the one to bring it up. Loch has a new app that is just wonderful. It's just wonderful, and it has all different pathways to glimpsing, to really sensing the larger truth of what we are, whether it's, a 1-minute practice or a longer practice. And so I just wanna bow to you, Loch, because I know the amount of energy
Mm.
and what it takes, blood, sweat, and tears to create an app, and it's
Yeah.
really wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, it just felt like it's the delivery system or the contact place that people need in the midst of a busy life, and that because it is already here, they can do a glimpse and then what I call marinate, for longer periods of time instead of meditate. You just glimpse, recognize, realize, embody, feel open-hearted, and now turn off, put the phone away, now. But you have now you're kind of given a short pointing, and that's been my interest, like you, is how to bring this into contemporary forms to translate not only the language from the cultures of contemplatives of all traditions, not just, from Western traditions as well as Eastern traditions, and psychological traditions and neuroscience traditions of, freedom and joy and maturity as well, and give tools that are experiential rather than just written supports. This is something that I felt would be a way to share, with people so they could make it part of their lives wherever they are. So yeah, so it's fun. Yeah, and as you say that, so I think that, and that's kind of how I set up, like, the intro course is kind of like natural calm is the first one, which is calm abiding, shamatha, but different ways to do that. And then the second one is types of mindfulness, deliberate and effortless. And then embodiment. And then I introduce a kind of way of doing this called local awake awareness, which is a way to actually unhook and drop and have awareness know itself, both within and outside, and rather than efforting to do it or trying to imagine doing it, and then embodiment and what I'm calling there awake loving flow, which you and I have translated in 12 different ways because we want to try to get at it somehow, like open-hearted awareness, Ram Dass called it loving awareness. You sometimes call it open-hearted presence. So there's something there, or heart mind.
Yeah.
Those three kind of moves from, being introduced to mindfulness, and which it unfolds naturally through Theravada insight, or to point to the pure awake awareness, and then to point to the non-dual, which in Buddhism, non-dual emphasis isn't just non-dual awareness, pure awareness, it's actually the awareness that is not other than the aliveness. So that's the embodiment. It's like, oh, they're not two. That there's what's called in the Mahamudra, same taste, or simultaneous mind. So this, and then what Thich Nhat Hanh so beautifully called interbeing. So that grounding, interbeing, interconnects us to everyone. And then the operating system, we don't have to go back to create a thinker and a doer in order to be a calmer version of our small selves. But this heart mind or open-hearted awareness has that fullness or wholeness, as you say. And so one of the glimpses is literally feeling how we're identified or attached to thought, and that it's like a small self riding a horse of our body, looking out of our eyes, and then this local awareness, which is identified or attached but is made of this spacious awareness, can unhook and kind of drop and know your jaw from within, your throat from within, and then feel completely embodied, and then find this heart mind or heart space that becomes the center. It also drops to the dantian and to the legs and to the feet and to the ground as well, but kind of is connected from, and it's, many people who this is a good match for, some glimpses don't work for everybody, but those who find it literally just like, oh, I'm home. Like this, I've been trying so hard from here to get there by being here. So
it really resonates in a way. It's a guide to move from that smaller, more constricted identity to relax the clench.
Mm,
And yet there's many different pathways that help us to relax the clench.
mm,
And for many people, the starting place is really feeling stuck in in a reactive small
mm,
self. I often think of Ram Dass, who said, I'm learning to treat my personality as a pet.
mhm.
It's and you're right that when we're actually resting and knowing it's home, that heart space, our personality actually, the natural intelligence of the universe and love of the universe actually moves through our personality.
Yeah.
It actually shifts, but there is that learning to trust who we really are. And as you know, one of the pathways that I many people have found valuable, we've touched on it a few times, is the rain practice.
Mhm.
Thought I'd just speak a little bit about it just
Yeah.
because so many people, have told me that rain saved my life.
Mm,
And I thought I'd share that,
yeah.
what convinced me to write a book about rain, my book, Radical Compassion's a guidebook, to rain, and now this new 20th anniversary edition of Radical Acceptance features it, because it wasn't there 20 years ago. Um, but people have kept giving me that feedback, and I remember, about 12 years ago, my own experience with rain, where my mom, who is 82, came down
Mm,
to live with us, and I went into this part of the trance of unworthiness where
mm,
I was falling short on being really there for my mom, but I was also falling short on this book I was writing. I just felt really trapped in that anxiety and guilt. And I remember one day I was right here in my office, and she came in with a New Yorker uh, article to show me I was actually working on a talk on loving kindness. And I didn't look up, and so she just laid the article down, nearby and very graciously walked out. And I turned to look at her retreating figure, and I had this thought, "I don't know how long I'm gonna have her."
mm,
And so I decided to take a pause and go sit down and practice RAIN. And the acronym stands for recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. And so recognize, okay, there's just naming it, there's guilt, there's, kind of fear, and there's anxiety, and kind of you let in all the parts that want to be there, and then
mm,
sensing what was most compelling was that feeling of guilt of letting her down. The A, allowing, means truly let life be as it is, not try to fix it, get rid of it, judge it, anything. Just let it be. It's kind of like it's a wave in the ocean. It belongs. And I actually say to myself, this belongs,
mm,
to not just to undo resistance. And then the I, investigate. There's beliefs there. I'm failing her and causing injury, and I'm failing what most matters to me, and underneath that, this felt sense of a kind of clench in my chest that was squeezing and aching and painful.
mm,
And so I kind of put my hand on my heart, and I often do this as part of investigating because it's so quick that we exit from our bodies and just to keep there, and
mm,
really said, well, what do you need to that guilty squeezing part? And it just needed to trust my goodness, needed to
mhm,
trust I loved her. And that was the compassion of just kind of from my own awake heart sending that message of, "You love her, trust your goodness." And if I
mm,
said it enough rounds, which I did, it got very tender and sincere. And after those steps, there's what I call after the rain. And after the rain is where we notice the presence that has
mhm,
unfolded.
mm,
There's a lot of undoing, and when there's an undoing of a clutch, the natural presence that's who we are unfolds itself. And I just felt this, that I was this field of tenderness and wakefulness. The reason I'm sharing is because I started noticing when I was with my mother, rather than guilt, I actually was showing up. Like I wasn't trying to figure out when we'd be done so I could come upstairs and get more work done. And she died maybe 3 years later, but I could still feel the sorrow of that,
Mm.
but I realized that rain saved my life moments with
Mhm.
my mom, and that, you know, that precious just the way you described those
Mm.
pathways of being with as much awareness as possible, not
Mhm.
resisting, and then discovering that what unfolds is really who we are is
Mhm.
so liberating because then we get to and I got to live with her for more of the truth of my heart. So I thought I'd just
Yeah.
share a little bit about the power of rain because it's so
Yes.
similar to, the work you do with parts
Yes.
and with recognizing the awareness that has
Mhm.
emerged and knowing that's our home.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I've always enjoyed that. I also, like you, I love playing with acronyms. I've also played, I played with those words. And just as you said this now, you said the after the rain, I just thought, oh, rainbow, be open with.
Oh my gosh. Let me write that down.
But I mean, it's almost this kind of playful way of teaching,
It's
to
playful, but
have,
it's so important because most
and it's
people
simple. It's simple,
and
simply
people need that because when we
summarizes it.
you described so powerfully earlier what happens when we get a limbic hijack,
Yeah.
the way stuff happens and then the frontal cortex kinda shuts down and then we're being run by the limbic system, and when that happens, it's like the times we most need, um, effortless mindfulness, it's not
Mm,
accessible. So
yeah.
having 4 steps that are simple and
Yes.
easy to remember, it's like that pause. It gets us it undoes the reactivity and allows us to
Mm,
remember who we are.
yeah. Yeah. And the investigate, you include both, like head, body, and heart in it, which I love because, just the word seems to be more head, but you say, and then just know what it is, but then, feel the felt sense and then, listen to what it says, so that really is a deep investigation.
That thank you for naming that, mirroring
Yeah.
that back because I think of it almost as probably 90% somatic
Uh-huh. Yes.
that
Yes.
investigates the most misunderstood step because so many
Right.
people spiral into the kind of psychotherapy of the stories and
Yes.
I
That's
should
right.
have and he didn't and know the beliefs that are there. It's helpful to say, what am I believing right now? Because whenever we're suffering, there's a belief that's keeping us identified. And
Mm-hmm.
to know that we can discover that belief, but we don't have to believe our beliefs. We
Yes.
really don't have to believe our beliefs. They're, as I think it was Sokni Rinpoche said, they're real, but they're not true.
That's right. Real but not true. Yeah.
Yeah. And so to see the layers of beliefs actually a portal back into the body. A lot of mindfulness teachings for years was, get out of the head and come into your body. But in a
Mm-hmm.
way, there was a bypass of
Yeah.
stories that are part of the narrative, but they're actually a portal to what's stored in our body. And if we try to
Right.
step away from the stories of being abandoned or being betrayed or whatever it is, it's harder to actually connect and be intimate with what's alive and locked in our bodies.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Because the the protective parts of us that are strong and often the ones rejected, are protecting something that we care about, something that's deeply precious. So it's that, so to be curious toward them and even not even to transform negative emotions into positive. So even that transformational, there's some levels of that are helpful, but ultimately the meeting of them, as as the other eyes, ignorance and interconnected and innocent and interdependent. So the sense that what is the saying that the reason that being in a human body is the perfect vehicle for awakening because of the suffering. So it gives us that, so that it gives us that ability to see that it's not two, that there isn't a problem from love, and that doesn't mean we're not healing or we're ignoring or we're passive. That there is action and interaction. That, but that the untying of the knot, or the detoxing process, for everyone goes at a different pace. And certainly with our colleagues, bringing forth trauma these days with, Gabor Mate and, the body keeps the score with Bessel, Van der Kolk, and others, that it's becoming. So now the key is to bring to that is that the small self, or the ego, cannot handle trauma. It's, no matter how smart or psychologically trained, the reason it's repressed is because it can't bear the unbearable. And so it's only by upgrading to forms of mindfulness and compassionate presence that isn't just an attitude or another part that's trying to be a polarized part that's just like, I'm hurting. Well, you shouldn't be hurting. I feel compassion toward you, like, okay, so who's compassionate toward those two parts? Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I am right there with you, that with that story of what are you unwilling to feel, there's an intelligence to being unwilling to feel when it's trauma, and there's not enough of that authentic resourcefulness, and you're
Mm-hmm.
describing it as really living from a more full sense of presence, because
Mm-hmm.
it's the presence slash love
Mm-hmm.
that actually frees up the identity of a traumatized self. And sometimes it takes, for many people, because trauma is so much in the society, it's in so many of our bodies, it takes a lot of emphasis on the practices that just create safety and love, that really remind us of our belonging, and actually not going right into where the pain is, but really resourcing with ourselves and not alone. I mean, that's the power of connecting with others, whether it's friend or a therapist or a healer, or we now have Cloud Sangha, which is a online community of mindful friends who just to explore this unfolding together. We need each other. It helps us realize that it's not so personal, which is some of the agony of it, is feeling like this is happening to a separate self that's deficient, and this trauma means I'm really, really broken. And as soon as I'm able to say, wow, I go to a very deep place of angst about such and such, it begins to heal because we enter that broader sphere that you were describing. But it takes some time of that
Mm-hmm.
resourcing
Yeah.
to be ready and able.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Some, the sensitive human beings are often the ones who come to meditation as well. So they often have the sensitivity. They're looking for a sensitive uh, cure and salve. Um, so that gradual support and love and whatever works for different people. But certainly one of the things that can, has been held somewhat is the belief that, well, the direct introduction to awake awareness shouldn't be done until you are healed, or it's an advanced practice. But often I've found, and even working in outpatient clinics, in Brooklyn and the Bronx, that, at the right timing, people do have access, even if they've had trauma and haven't
Absolutely.
developed a strong ego.
I'm
So they
right
don't have
there
to
with
get an
you.
ego.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is not like a progression where what's always and already true,
Mm-hmm.
that loving awareness isn't and we've all had glimpses, and
Hmm.
the more the better. It may be that when someone's really stuck, they can't follow a sequence that will enlarge them, that might be some of the traditional ways of disidentifying. One of the things I found more and more with people that I teach and work with is the power of prayer. At times we're very stuck in that separateness. And John O'Donohue, that the poet and mystic, says that prayer is the bridge between longing and belonging. And we all have this longing to belong. It's just part of our DNA. And if we get really in touch with it, inhabit it in our body, and feel the sincerity of it, and out of that place, you know, reach out towards a larger truth, a larger love, the power of that longing connects us. It's like the longing is love calling us home, is the way I think of it. And you said so beautifully before, suffering is awareness sending the message that we're stuck in something smaller than the truth. We're in that cocoon, and so prayer helps us to connect with a larger reality. And the beauty is it's one of those practices that begins in a dualistic frame of mind and dissolves the duality. And I practice enough myself that I can, with prayer, that I know how, if I'm feeling really small, or I'm kind of caught in being down on myself, and I'll sense that prayer of, please love me. Please may I feel loved and held and belonging. And then the yearning actually opens me to, uh, there's a one teacher put it, love is always loving you, that there's just
Hmm.
love, and there's still a you for a little bit. But as we let in that love, as we really let it just bathe us, we start
Yeah.
discovering the awareness that is already inside and lit up and loving
Right.
too, and then that sense of separateness from that loving awareness dissolves. So I really encourage people
Hmm.
to experiment. It's all an experiment when they're caught in separateness, the different ways to bridge to a very heart experienced, opening sense
Right.
of belonging.
Yes. Beautiful. Yeah. I think, it's a very kind thing of you to to bring that back in some ways, because I think some of the secularization, particularly of Buddhism, more than even yoga or other Eastern traditions, was to take out the religion and to make it more available for people who have actually had either traumatic religious experiences, or was forced on them, or there were other reasons that it wasn't the best place, and they're looking for something that's simple and soothing, and working with their own consciousness. But prayer or reaching out to something greater is in all Buddhist traditions, and it's also in secular traditions like recovery communities. Prayer and meditation. Just call it power greater than yourself. Like whatever that is, it's just not you. You know, and resource with the source. What's that? And say help, or thank you, or just open to to nature and to the universe, and to but to not stay in and just meditate in and just try to do the work that doesn't open to the mystery and to something that is undefinable but palpable once you find a way. And especially people who are devotional types of people, they need that, so that it doesn't, because you and I make sure they don't do it to us, because that's the key. That's one of my main things.
Yeah.
Like, we're not playing guru here. It's like it's within you, and look bigger, or more in, or more out, and resource with community, and but find that that plugging in to something greater, and whether it's talking or singing, or
Dancing.
chanting,
Yeah.
dancing. Yeah, just feel that there's a willing, an openness to something you don't have to define.
And the
Or
beauty
yeah.
is, as you open to it, there is a natural space of wisdom that
Mm,
reveals that there was no self there. It's
mhm,
like it is
yeah.
part of dissolving that identification. And I remember one teacher, it might have been Ramakrishna, but I can't
Mm,
remember, said that if you can't get rid of that self-identity, then just dedicate it to love,
mm,
dedicate it's like if you can't get rid of the self-identity, then cultivate gratitude or devotion or prayer or being
mm,
in nature and just feeling,
mm.
"Oh, I love this is me, an expanded part of me." And that kind of, bridging then actually frees up the identification. So it's a very
Yes.
cool
Yeah.
pathway from, dual to non-dual.
Yeah. And it is that, it is that, finding the love that's greater than you, that is who you essentially are.
Yes.
So there's the non-dual. There's
Yes.
the, so and then you can actually say, then you can feel, I am love. Oh, I don't need to get love. Love's already here because it's not love with a small L or a type of love, but it's the love that you didn't, it's the unconditional love, the unconditioned love. Yeah. So
As
that's,
you say that, I'm so aware that for so many people, as soon as they touch into that more of that sense of freedom, there's a tendency to then move right on to the next thing. And neuroscience is such a support in this, talking about how for a realization to really stick, for it to be really deep and pervading, we need to actively install it, like spend 15 to 30 seconds, just attending to, oh, this, the isness that's, just learning to stay some. And that's what creates the familiarity. So whether it's through gratitude or through that
mhm,
bridging of love or prayer, or whether it's through a guided glimpse that you do,
mhm,
it's that intentional getting familiar, getting curious. What is this like? Curiosity is, oh my gosh,
yeah.
there's the twin pathways of curiosity, loving the truth and loving love.
Yeah. Loving
And
love.
we all have we all have both, and we
Yeah.
sometimes lead with one or lead with the other. And I'll share with you, I was just with a very dear friend who's
Mm,
probably got a week or 2 to live, maybe
mm,
3,
mhm.
Roland Griffiths, who's, very
Oh,
known as a
right. Oh,
pioneer in
yes, sure.
psychedelics.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So we just, I had the honor and privilege of about 3.5 hours with him a few days ago, and here's this person who is on his way out and yet utterly curious about the whole passing, and it's like there's unpleasantness going on, just as you said, you don't have to get rid of the unpleasantness. It's just that his curiosity is keeps on linking him to a larger space of gratitude and wakefulness and openness, so that there's a profound quality of acceptance that's, when I'm with him, there's a part of me saying, "Well, so what can I learn more about, facing death close up?" And wow, curiosity.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. That's so amazing. His work is so important, I think, for so many people. And, having also been with people who are passing, just walking in the room is such a sacred experience.
Yep.
There's like a, with most people, sometimes it can be very agitated, but it's very full of something, Sometimes people are early on, clinging, but others who have kind of started that process are opening. And, I've spent some time, even was fortunate with my mother 4 years ago, who had a stroke and then was in the hospital. And my wife and I just slept in the small one one person
Mm,
hospital bed next to her
mm,
over the night and would just, hold her hand and just
mm,
talk to her. And then, and then we were there with my brother and sister-in-law, just talking and kind of laughing. And then Paige, my wife, just said, "There." And we looked over and she just took that final breath and then we just all just gathered around her and just thanked her and prayed and spent this time. So it's and the thing is, she lived a good life. She lived a full life. That's all I mean, I feel like I don't know what would happen if tomorrow, but I feel like for me it's dessert now. It's like if it were time, I would hope, like Roland, I could face it because, the now is so eternal.
yes.
I, I mean, I don't know if that just sounds like hope that doesn't sound like like a like a card, but it literally is like that's the
Yeah.
preciousness of having been, yeah, in like you're saying, is the very great fortune to be with people at that time.
Oh,
And people talk about the birth of babies, but this is the other birth of, right?
it is. And, this has been a year of it for me. And
Mm,
I just keep noticing that as the body is passing, there's this transparency
mm,
that
mm,
happens. And it's
mhm.
much easier to sense the truth of what you said, that timeless
Mm,
spirit that
mhm.
is living through. And I tell myself, as my body is doing its aging things, that okay, the
Yeah,
body's going down, but the awareness is waking
yeah,
up, and
yeah.
it's a trade-off, but
That's
I'll
right.
go for awareness, you know.
Yes,
And
yes.
there's a great Bhutanese saying that if you want to be happy, contemplate death 5 times a day.
Mm,
And I think it means the death of the moments as much
mhm.
as anything else,
Yeah.
that the more we feel like, "Okay, you and I are together right now, and then
Mhm.
this particular encounter will pass,"
Mm,
and sensing the comings and goings allows us to tap into the mystery that is utterly still and eternal and present. It's a gift. So
yeah.
it is
Mm,
a beautiful training to tend towards death in that way.
yeah. Yeah, and I'm just kind of called back to something you were saying before. It's kind of bringing these together, what you would call the the fullness of you. Samsara and nirvana would be one way to say it, but
Yeah.
but that as we are had the great good fortune of stumbling into this um, gift of you know this world of meditation and consciousness and psychology and healing, uh, that when we speak, I just some people, as you say, like, oh, I don't feel that. I don't want, I want that. I'm in pain. I would, that's too hard. That's too difficult. It's like, I was there too. That was, I'm still, I still have certainly fullness of experience and, bring it on. It goes through a detox process that there was, I can remember just a couple of years ago, just sitting at a table with a friend and just starting to shake and then feel all this fear. And he was like, "What's going on?" I said, "Oh, it's nothing personal." and I was like,
That's
"What am I
great.
saying exactly?" It's like, and then and then I said, "Wait a minute, what it is it something's moving through, something's shaking and baking here, and I'm just sitting here with you, letting it happen, and I'm not even tracking how early it is or whether it has something or how it got triggered. Not sure, but it's clearing through." And then there is, like you said about neuroscience, there's something about they say that emotions in the neurons is what takes experiences and embodies them. So that's why trauma or negative experiences get bound in the body. So the importance of bliss for me
Mhm.
is really important. Or bliss, you could say, is a form of love. You could say bliss, you could say joy, loving kindness, But that, even relief, even like, but letting that not be a passing, like, okay, that was nice. Now let's go do something, but letting it, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, marinate the body in open-hearted awareness and let the bliss go, follow it back to the essential bliss or the unconditional love, which now it's become more, it's not like the passing bliss with a small b. I mean, it is in some ways, but it's like, sometimes I say it's like that most intense bliss in the body spread out thinly throughout the universe.
Mm. Mm.
It's kind of like just, and that, not that everyone can experience that, but when there's moments, so again, it's like, that's why I call it glimpses. So glimpse is not a meditation state. It's not a experience. It's not a positive experience, or it's actually a shift from the openness to be aware, have recognition of the awareness, to realization that I am the awareness that's embodied. And then it's recognizing itself. The glimpse is, oh, this new intelligence is aware of itself being here with whatever's happening. I'm not doing it.
Mm. Taking that with me, especially the part of the bliss spreading out thinly through the universe. I'm going to go with that ride.
That's a good, but
Thank you.
it does get it is the important, because there is some kind of almost a little, can be a Puritan quality to some of the
Yeah.
Buddhist
Yeah.
practice. So it can be a little, and there's a need, just that from the overactiveness to, okay, just sit still. Okay, well, I want to get up, like, okay, just sit a little, there's a little discipline here, but then it's leading to freedom and dancing and joy. And
We need to celebrate. I mean, Thich
yeah,
Nhat
celebrate.
Hanh said that it's not enough to suffer. You have to touch peace
Yeah,
also, and that includes love, gratitude, joy, wonder. We need it. It's part of who we are. It's more that we have conditioning to focus on the negative, so we need to undo that conditioning by just what you're saying, attending to the sweetness. I'm really
bring it
enjoying
up.
this, Loch. I feel like we both have developed our languages and our ways of practice, and they're very beautifully synergistic. So this has been
Yes.
a treat. Thank you.
Yeah, this is such a wonderful thing. And I can, because they're synergistic, I can follow your language. I'm like, oh yeah, I know what you mean. I think it's like this. Oh, that's good. Like, oh, that's not, I like that. Like it feels like the same thing coming around the diamond, like we're coming around the diamond in a different way,
Mm, mm. Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
So it's wonderful. Good. Well, such a pleasure. And, certainly now that, we may have a chance to meet, in the near future, and glad to have you in my life and in our lives and in the lives of so many, that, having a colleague who's like-minded and like-hearted
Yeah, yeah.
is such a gift. So I really thank you, honor you,
Oh,
and all you do.
it's a
Yeah.
pleasure to walk together, dear.
Yes.
Blessing.